Bentar, oke. Halo Arina, selamat siang. Ini aku tadi baru selesai ngajar juga, jadi ngajar training soft skill buat anak mahasiswa baru. Pas baru selesai, terus langsung nyambung kelas ini.
Terus yang Dragon's Den-nya habis ini ya?
Bukan habis ini, tapi hari Jumat besok. Gimana?
Wah,
kita wawancara nih calon-calon presenternya. Garin, kamu gimana persiapan Dragon's Den-nya? Arina juga kan ya, Arina? Kayaknya Giselnya lagi... Garin. Garin. Oke, kita tunggu dulu. Mungkin pada masih siap-siap. Mereka minggu depan udah ujian nih. Nanti aku minta tolong ya buatin soal ujian untuk materimu.
Boleh.
Iya, 5 soal.
Ujian tertulis gitu kan, maksudnya bukan presentasi
multiple
atau apa.
choice. Selamat datang untuk Bondan. Ini saya kurang tahu ya dari S2 mungkin atau S3. Ada Hasya, lalu kemudian ada juga Hafiz. Selamat datang. Gimana, Nat? Masih kerasan hidup di Belanda? Nggak pengen pindah Amsterdam?
Kepikiran, cuman ya mahal banget kan Mbak kalau rumah-rumah di Amsterdam dibandingin Leiden. Si Hafiz aja kepikiran pindah ke Leiden kalau nggak Den Haag tuh. Iya, terus kan emang lebih kecil aja Leiden, lebih enak gitu.
Iya sih, tapi ya commute-nya lumayan juga ya. 45 menit.
Iya sih, lumayan kayak 45 menit. Tapi karena aku work from home sejak Maret dan kemungkinan sampai masih awal tahun depan, jadi aku
enak-enak aja ya?
Enak aja.
Aduh, aku kapan nih berangkat lagi?
Iya, Mbak.
Gimana nih pandeminya?
Kan? Apa belum juga?
Punyaku defer sampai September 2021. Beasiswanya buka, ya kan dia soalnya lagi pandemi gini kan duitnya dikerahkan buat penanganan COVID gitu. Terus si Wilco-nya sih, ya santai aja, kita juga tahu gitu. Maksudnya COVID itu bukan sesuatu yang kita bisa prediksi, jadi kamu kapan siap berangkatnya ya berangkat aja, tinggal ngabarin. Itu dia bilang, oh iya, aku sih.
Iya, kayaknya pasti research-nya si Wilco dan segala macam juga agak ke-postpone nggak sih kalau
mestinya gini. Ya, karena model riset mereka kan banyak yang field research yang nggak online gitu ya, atau lab.
Iya.
Selamat datang untuk teman-teman yang baru datang, ada Sania, kemudian Rahma, ada Haula. Terima kasih teman-teman yang sudah mendaftar untuk ikut acara ini. Untuk teman-teman yang dari kelas Consumer Psychology ada Sania. Sania. Hi, Sania, are you there?
Yes, Miss, I am.
Okay, I was wondering how your Dragon's Den presentation is coming along.
We're doing great so far. We still haven't finished the persuasion and the advertisement.
All right, yeah, because for the IUP class, I didn't get any mid-progress reports, so I was wondering how you're doing.
Yeah,
that's great. You still have about 6 days,
yes,
so I think that's enough time, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for sharing.
Yes, Miss, you're welcome.
Oke, terima kasih atas kehadirannya. Ada Yasinta, kemudian ada Danang. Kita masih nunggu pembicara satu lagi nih. Kemarin dia masuk TV lagi.
Iya, aku lihat. Mantap lah memang.
Iya nih.
Ya dia tiap hari ngasih talk gitu deh.
Kayaknya tuh sudah jadi part of his profession gitu.
Iya, udah. Mantap.
Tapi kalau Nadia jadi dosen tamu tetap di mata kuliah ini semester depannya lagi.
Boleh banget. Tapi iyalah, maksudnya dia juga lebih expert lah, Nadia.
Ya enggak lah ya, kalau lebih expert sama aja. Mana dia kan sama-sama bekerja di industri sebagai consumer psychologist. Oke, kita ya, tadi Mas Adi pengen nongkrongin, tapi dia entah ketiduran kali.
Mbak Tia sih.
Iya, ada menyusup dia dasar.
Cocok kok, masih cocok.
Dia kan udah mau selesai, udah sampai conclusion itu PhD.
Iya.
Pulang sampai kapan, Nat?
3 minggu kali ini, agak lama sih. Jadi 18 Desember balik lagi ke sini.
Oh, gitu. Kenapa nggak sampai habis Natal aja?
Nggak boleh. Aku kan juga udah nanya, boleh nggak sebulan gitu. Wah, maksimal 3 minggu. Ya, tapi kan
karena visanya?
Enggak karena visa. Karena kayak mereka takut kalau misalnya kelamaan kerja di negara lain kayak Indonesia gitu, pajaknya gimana? Maksudnya mereka kita dibayar gaji untuk bayar pajak di Netherlands, tapi kalau kita kerja di Indonesia, ngerti nggak?
Ngerti. Sungguh Dutch sekali.
Iya.
Baiklah. Ya lumayan lah 3 minggu. Kenapa nggak dipasin berangkatnya menjelang Natal, Nat? Karena tiketnya mahal.
Iya, jadi cowok aku visanya bukan nggak diperpanjang. Jadi Trump menahan semua visa sampai akhir tahun, nggak boleh diperpanjang.
Oh, jadi dia masih punya
doang.
visa gitu.
Iya.
Mau reunian sama pacar.
Iya, nanti ketemu di Doha sebenarnya.
Oh my God.
Iya.
Oke, selamat datang teman-teman yang baru hadir. Kita masih menunggu satu pembicara lagi. Kalau enggak ya nanti kita mulai dulu. Dia akan menyusul gitu ya. Juga hadirinnya ini baru kira-kira 20%-nya. Sekedar heads up aja bagi teman-teman yang tidak berasal dari kelas consumer behavior atau perilaku konsumen. Kelas ini nanti akan diadakan dalam bahasa Inggris karena memang bagian dari skema kuliah IUP. Tapi nanti silahkan kalau misalnya ada kesulitan boleh langsung bertanya gitu ya, atau bertanya pun tidak harus bahasa Inggris, bisa pakai bahasa Indonesia. Gitu. Nanti kalau selagi kuliah, jika memungkinkan, mohon berkenan untuk menyalakan kameranya supaya di sini nggak sepi-sepi amat. Nah, terima kasih Erika. Erika ini dari ini ya registrasi Erika. Oh, selamat siang Pak Rahmat. Matur nuwun sudah rawuh. Iya, Erika dari kelas mana Erika? S1 reguler registrasi?
Reguler, Mbak.
Oh iya, dari kelas perilaku konsumen atau?
Iya, perilaku.
Oh iya, sorry, saya yang kelewatan. Oke, terima kasih Erika sudah hadir. Halo, ada Danang. Hai Dan. How are you? Good to see you. Alright, Dan, you're not registered in the consumer behavior class, right? You registered independently from a link, or are you registered here?
I'm registered in the class.
Oh, sorry, I keep forgetting because you're also in my consumer community development class. Sorry, Dan. Sorry.
It's fine.
Oke, iya Pak Rahmat ini kenalkan, iya nggak apa-apa Mira kalau misalnya nggak bisa dinyalakan kameranya. Perkenalkan ini adalah Mbak Nadia. Mbak Nadia adalah saat ini bekerja di Booking.com Amsterdam. Pak Rahmat adalah tandeman, istilahnya dosen yang mengajar bersama saya di kelas perilaku konsumen dan consumer behavior. Beliau adalah lulusan doktor dari Tilburg.
Mbak Nadia.
Halo.
Salam kenal.
Salam kenal juga.
Terima kasih sudah bersedia datang mengisi kelas kita.
Oh iya Pak, sama-sama. Makasih juga udah undang.
Mungkin
Pak Rahmat breaking up
kami
Pak,
yang berterima kasih nih. Terima kasih sharingnya nanti.
Iya Pak.
Ini mungkin koneksi di tempat saya tidak stabil ya.
Oh iya nggak apa-apa Pak. Nanti kalau misalnya sewaktu-waktu bisa.
Maaf saya matikan video.
Siap.
Ini kebetulan di daerah saya hujan. dan seperti biasa terus tidak stop.
Oh iya, siapa? Nggak apa-apa. Padahal kita tetanggaan ya Pak, di tempat saya belum hujan. Iya, oke.
Yeah, almost.
Oke. Terima kasih buat teman-teman yang baru hadir. Selamat datang. Kita masih ada sekitar, kita tunggu 1-2 menit ya sebelum kita mulai acaranya. Masih menunggu satu pembicara lagi, mungkin agak telat sedikit. Semoga segera menyusul. Kalau tidak, kita ya mulai aja dulu. Bagi yang berkenan untuk, bagi yang bisa, mohon berkenan untuk menyalakan kameranya ya, biar tidak sepi-sepi amat di sini. Terima kasih untuk Erika yang masih setia menyalakan kamera, dan juga Danang. Danang lagi di mana, Danang? Di warnet?
Enggak, Miss, lagi di Starbucks.
Oh, lagi di Starbucks. Jakal ya? Oh, iya. Oke, iya. Alright, karena sudah memasuki, halo Harera juga, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us with your camera here, because we are already, the time tells us it's 2 p.m. I'm going to start this class. We currently have about a third of the people who should be attending this class, and I'm sure more people will trickle in later on. However, let's just start already. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar, Career Pathways to Becoming a Consumer Psychologist. My name is Zafira, for those of you who do not attend the consumer behavior class or have not met me in other classes before, and I'll be responsible for hosting this guest lecture today. I would like to welcome and greet our VIPs, very important people here. There is Kak Nadia. Hi, Kak Nadia.
Hello.
And there is also, hopefully he's already here. Kak Agia, are you here yet? Maybe not yet, that's okay. How should I address you, Kak Nadia? Kak Nadia, Bu Nadia? Nadia? Okay, okay. Kak Nadia, thank you very much for sparing some time to share your valuable insights and experiences here with our students today. It's really an honor to have you here today, and I'd also like to say hello to Pak Rahmat, who is the co-lecturer for this course. Selamat siang, Pak Rahmat. Thank you for joining with us today. For your information, today's webinar is attended or will be attended by approximately 43 students from the Consumer Behavior course and 52 other students from the Faculty of Psychology, Universitas Gadjah Mada, including bachelor, master, and PhD students. Initially, only 10 seats were made available for students who did not belong to this class, but we were very surprised at the general public's enthusiasm to attend this webinar that we had to add more seats, to the point that the academic office called me to close it with after only 24 hours of our registration opening. This shows just how curious and enthusiastic the psychology community is towards the rising field and the need to hold more webinars like this in the near future. I'm going to check for a bit whether our speaker is here. Kak Agia. Hello, Kak Agia. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Kira.
Hey.
Hi, Nadia. How are you guys?
It's nice to see you here. I think this is the first time we actually talk to each other
Yes,
live. Yeah, even though we have known each other for quite some time. How should I address you? Kak Agia, Pak Agia?
Just Agia.
Okay, Agia. Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you again for joining in with us. I'm now going to continue elaborating on how this guest lecture will work and note some other technical matters. Shortly, I will begin reading the short bio of Nadia, Kak Nadia, who is our first guest lecturer, and she will then do a short presentation for about 15 minutes, followed by a Q&A. After that, Kak Nadia will answer, after she has answered some questions, we will get to know Kak Agia more, and then we will listen to his talk for about 15 minutes, followed by another Q&A with Kak Agia, followed by a question panel where I ask both guest lecturers the same questions. Now, again, even though this class is held in English, I understand not everyone is from the International Undergraduate Program class. So feel free to ask in Bahasa Indonesia during the Q&A session, or if you find that anything is unclear, you can also drop questions in the chat box in Bahasa Indonesia anytime you feel like it. Right, all right, now let's start with our first main agenda. Before I give away this virtual stage, allow me to introduce our first guest and presenter by reading her short biography. Her name is Kak Nadia Naulita, and she goes by Nadia. She graduated her bachelor's degree from University of Groningen. Groningen, yeah, for those of you who don't speak in the Dutch accent or don't understand the Dutch accent, it's University of Groningen, so that's really nice for some of you who actually attended that university as an exchange student last semester. I know, I think at least 2 or 3 of you attended Groningen last semester. During her time in Groningen, she was active as a student in the Erasmus Student Network, Indonesian Student Association in the Netherlands, or PPI Belanda, and Indonesian Student Association in Groningen, or PPI Groningen. As a bachelor student, she was enrolled in the extracurricular course on entrepreneurship, facilitated by the University of Groningen Center for Entrepreneurship, and gained an in-depth understanding of entrepreneurial marketing, design thinking, networking, financing, as well as commercial, social, and sustainable entrepreneurship. Now, after she graduated Groningen with flying colors in about 3 years, I think, yeah, the degree is about 3 years. She then immediately continued her master's degree at the Economic and Consumer Psychology program at Leiden University with a scholarship from Leiden Excellence Scholarship, or called LEX. She graduated in 2018 with a cum laude. And let me tell you that getting a cum laude in the Netherlands is very, very hard. So Nadia's achievement is really, really something. Now, while doing her master's degree, she also did a 6-month internship at an award-winning marketing agency in Amsterdam. It's called Winkel, which helps clients conduct successful innovation launch. To those of you who watch Startup, I guess it's kind of like that as well, who watch the drama Startup. She was part of the Quantitative Research team, where she tested and advised product ideas, concepts, and claims for FMCG brands across Europe, US, and APAC, including Reckitt Benckiser, Johnson & Johnson, and international flavors and fragrances. Shortly after finishing her internship, I think even before she finished her master's degree, she started her current position, which is Junior Market Research and Insights Specialist at Booking.com headquarters in Amsterdam. Everyone, please give her a warm welcome. Let's please turn on your microphone and give her a big round of applause. Welcome, Nadia.
Thank you.
All right.
Let's share my screen now.
Yeah, sure. So Kak Nadia is actually going home to Indonesia later on today. She has about a few hours to talk here before she leaves for the airport. So thank you again for making the time.
No problem.
Right.
So yes, thanks again, Bafira. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. It's currently 8 in the morning, actually, in the Netherlands. So it's still a little bit dark, but I hope I don't sound like I'm half awake because I'm not. Yeah, I'm very excited to have this sharing session with you guys. And as you can tell, I'm gonna talk about becoming a consumer psychologist. And I suppose this title, consumer psychologist, may not be the most common thing we hear, especially in Indonesia. And that's why we're gonna delve into it more today. But first of all, you can all see my screen, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Before proceeding, Kak Nadia, do you mind if we record this class?
Oh, I'm already recording, Paramat.
You did?
Yeah.
It's okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Sorry then, thank you.
No, that's fine.
No problem. So one of the things we can do with consumer psychology is market research, which is the field that I'm currently working on. So first, let me tell you briefly about my background to give you some context. Just repeating Mbak Fira, I obtained my master's in economic and consumer psychology in Leiden University, which is actually where I met Mbak Fira, who took the same program. And later I had an internship in a market research agency doing market research for fast-moving consumer goods companies like if you heard Unilever, Danone, and etc. And then I decided to apply for another market research role and got into booking.com. So if you know Traveloka, ticket.com, or yeah, those travel companies in Indonesia, we're actually pretty much the same in the same industry. So that's a little bit about me. Now I want to show you this quote I once bumped into that says, research is to see what everybody else has seen and to think that nobody else has thought. So what is actually market research? And market research, it's more than just seeing statistics and make conclusions about it. And it's more about seeing opportunities. It's thinking what you can do differently with it that none others are currently think of. So to break it down, there are 4 goals of market research. So first, to understand your consumers better, their behaviors and preferences, and from there you create business strategies for your business. And second one, market research is useful to compare how you perform against competitors in the same industry. For example, in my case, I work at booking.com, so I want to know how do Indonesian travelers think about booking.com versus Traveloka or ticket.com, etc. And third, market research can be used to test our ideas or our product. So once we come up with new product or innovate our product or optimize our product, we want to gather feedback from consumers to make sure that this product is actually useful for them and it meets their expectations. And last one, market research can be used to find opportunities within the new trends and changes. For instance, now that COVID is happening, it brings us the new normal. So what kind of business opportunities can we tap into? And that is something market research can help with. So when talking about market research, there are actually, I would say, 2 types of market research. So the first one is qualitative, which deals with interviews, focus groups, and talking with smaller number of people and asking the why of why kind of question. So why consumers do what they do, why do they prefer this over that? And usually we use qualitative research in the early stage of everything where we have no idea at all of what people behave or think towards a certain topic. And then the other type of market research is quantitative research, which is I myself am a quantitative market researcher, which means that I deal with questionnaires, numbers, and I have more people to do research on, and I ask questions such as yes or no, agree to disagree, with that kind of scale. So to sum it up, if qualitative research answers the why kind of questions, quantitative answers the how many or to what extent, etc. So this is an example of my current work at Booking. And this project is called Traveler Behavior, which we run every year to describe travel habits, behavior in different countries, and how they change after the pandemic. And next to that, we also wanted to measure how big the size of traveler is among the total population in different countries. And all of this would eventually help us to build our marketing strategies, particularly how to target these people and how to correctly advertise to them. And so one of the findings where we could estimate the number of travelers by generation in Indonesia is that when we look into their travel behaviors, we found that reactions to the pandemic have been different across generations in a way that the younger generation, for example, tends to be more optimistic about the future of travel, and they want to adjust their behavior in order to travel safer in the current new normal. And another example, I would say this one is a good one, is about sustainable travel. As a travel company, we feel responsible to minimize our impact on the environment, local cultures, and economies. For example, by encouraging people to buy flight tickets with an option to fund a project that reduces carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. But before working on this kind of effort, we first wanted to know what are the barriers to choose sustainable travel options among people. And by doing this research, we actually found that travelers tend to think that they act more sustainably or they are go green more than others. Why is this a barrier? Because if you've heard this, one of the psychology theories called social norms theory, it's because people's behavior is influenced by the misperceptions of how other people think or act. So, for example, if I think that my friends don't consider sustainability when traveling, they don't care about the impact on environment, etc., then I myself will also be less likely to consider it when I'm traveling. So, since people believe that they are actually more sustainable than others, they will not feel that there's a strong norm to adhere to when it comes to making sustainable choices in travel. Or, in other words, the social pressure to change behavior is not very high because there's no pressure as such. So those are the examples of kind of work where I can utilize my consumer psychology knowledge in market research. And what are exactly the skills you need to become a market researcher? I would say there are 4 skills that I personally think are most relevant. First one is statistics, but don't freak out just yet. I think analytical and numerical skills are very important in market research, but it's not always about running advanced statistical analysis because sometimes, even in my current work, I feel that insights can be gotten even from simple statistics. And second one is accuracy and attention to detail. So from asking the right questions based on your research goals and then analyzing the numbers you may have missed, etc. But I think this is a bigger one, and I would say this is one of the most important ones to have, which is curiosity for people and business. So market research is about figuring out why people do what they do in order to impact business decisions. So therefore, consumer psychology or market research is most relevant when it is tied to a bigger picture. And lastly, communication and storytelling. Market researchers don't only sit behind the desk and play with numbers or play with words. They also have to make sure that their research is impactful enough for the business and help to drive strategies. And this can only be achieved if you can communicate your research findings and actually have a good influence on that. How to obtain the skills? I think this is pretty obvious to seek learnings from university, but also outside university actually. So take psychology courses that are related to consumer psychology, which is most of you are currently doing, but also I think it's good to get to know other fields like business, marketing, or even IT, because it's getting more and more relevant in the market to actually have a subset of skills and complement it with one another. And also there are plenty of e-learning platforms to improve your technical skills like Udemy, Coursera, etc. And of course, lastly, to attend seminars, workshops, and conferences to learn from the experts. And the second one, I think, is also very relevant in building your career, is to build on the job experiences through an internship or part-time job. And there are actually several ways where you can do this, right? So first is to become a market research or a research assistant at the university with topic that is related to your interest. And then the second one is to do internship in a market research agency. So more, either a startup or an agency that serves clients, for example, like Nielsen, Kantar, Ipsos, and many more in Indonesia. And the last option is to work in a client-side company. So, for example, I know that Unilever has this position called Consumer Market Insights, I think, or even e-commerce companies like Tokopedia. They all have started to see the importance of market research, and they have positions like this, and even for internships, as far as I know. And lastly, read, read, and read. There are easy reads out there that can help you to learn to interpret and visualize data, such as news and articles, infographics, or even reports from market research agency. And of course, there are plenty of super interesting books out there related to consumer psychology. And it's actually applied to so many areas like businesses, government policies, nonprofit organizations. So yeah, feel free to take a screenshot of this slide. Otherwise, I can also share it separately later. I know some of this book from Mbak Fira actually, so she knows better. And now we come to the most important question. So why market research? Is this role really relevant in reality? And the answer is yes, because the employment of market researchers is projected to grow from 18% from 2019 to 2029, which is a much faster rate than average occupations. But you may notice that market research is the field that people with different backgrounds can enter, including those from business or marketing major, right? So while those people from business and marketing have knowledge about business theories, policies, marketing frameworks, economics, statistics, etc., what can we as consumer psychologists bring to the table? So I think here are some unique qualities. First, we have the knowledge of human nature and their behaviors, understanding of how cognition works, cultural differences, critical thinking, development through the lifespan that may cause change in preference, trends, etc. And I think this is all relevant to complement the business side of things. And why is that so? I think this quote sums up the importance of what I just mentioned previously, which is knowing your customers is great, but knowing how they behave is even better. So I think that's pretty much it. I hope I didn't go too fast. So if you have any questions, feel free to shout.
All right. Thank you very much, Kak Nadia. Everyone, please give a round of applause for Kak Nadia. Yay. Well, a silent round of applause because everyone is muted. But yes, there is kind of a misconception, right, in among psychology students that marketing is no place for us. But in reality, marketing, as Kak Nadia has already elaborated in her presentation, is definitely a place where we can contribute a lot of our skills and knowledge. And thank you for bringing that up to our students, because a lot of our students want to join in on industries and companies, but feel like the only way to join is become an HR. And that's not true. There are so many other roles that we can take part in as people in companies. On that note, I'd like to provide several slots for questions. I told Kak Nadia that this bunch is a little bit quiet, so silahkan pakai bahasa Indonesia. Kalau misalnya mau pakai bahasa Indonesia boleh, pakai bahasa Inggris juga boleh. Oke. Kalau enggak, nanti Kak Nadia silahkan dipilih aja. As a lecturer, it's what we do in class. Oke. Oke, halo Zafira. Ya, Silakan Zafira dinyalakan mikrofonnya. You're allowed to use English or bahasa Indonesia. Zafira is actually one of our the people who registered from outside the class. So thank you for joining in, Zafira. Bisa dinyalakan mikrofonnya? Oh, oke. Gimana? Bisa langsung ditanya di chat box. Zafira reading Zafira's question. Oke, kita tunggu chatnya. Silakan if there are any other questions while we're waiting for Zafira's question to pop up in the chat box. Feel free to. Oh, Saskia. Yes. Okay, Saskia, you can. Is your mic on?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much, Mbak Nadia. I'm very curious what else you do besides market research. Like I'm sure, like you do a lot of research, yes, but I just want to know like what other aspects of the job are what other things you do in the job in particular, or is it just research and analyzing and presenting, or how?
Yes, thanks for your question, Saskia. It's definitely beyond that. So it's not as boring as I told you guys. Believe me, there's a lot of market research that you can actually find interesting. So for example, yeah, you may hear that from me that it's all about research and then making conclusions and then finally coming up with suggestions or recommendations for the business. But it's actually more than that, because you know about a lot of things, not only about consumers, but especially if you are in a company that is big enough that you have knowledge of all these things that people in the company don't know, and they come to you for knowledge. And it's not about just researching your consumers, but you also learn about what other companies perform, and how you predict trends for the future, and you look at the past to assess how you perform. So it's research, but it's a lot of aspects. You do research not only on consumers but also products, and you talk to lots of the experts and with different methodology. So I think it's it is, and as overall is research, but what you can use from the research is a lot, and the knowledge you have from research, I think, is going to be useful for you to move to different areas, and to have knowledge of a lot of things is actually useful to help different people from different teams and different businesses. And I think that's the bigger picture of what it is about, other than doing research behind, but also influence and communicate your knowledge to the wider audience.
Thank you. That was very insightful.
All right. Thank you, Saskia, for your question. So I guess the research that we do in companies or in market insights companies, for more specifically, is not the research you do for your bachelor thesis. It's not as, I guess, daunting, I may say. It's more applied. It has a lot to do with what you guys have actually learned in class about segmentation, targeting, and then how to persuade the consumers, if I may complete Kak Nadia's explanation, and if I'm not wrong.
I think one of the examples that is actually clearer to my point is that when you do research, you already know what to expect from it. So other than the research that I mentioned earlier, we also, before launching our campaign or advertisement in TV, we also tested our advertisement to make sure that for example, Indonesian travelers or consumers actually like our advertisement, and this advertisement speaks to them, a lot of things, like I mentioned. And most of the things that we use is, like I said, not only statistics, but actually common sense and your knowledge from psychology. How would people react to this? Okay, I know that 70% of people are interested in social media. So how can I use this? How can I leverage this knowledge for something bigger? So I think that sums it up.
All right. And then there's another question. Well, the question from Zafira. Hello, Kanadia. Your presentation is very insightful and interesting, and you definitely didn't go too fast. I want to ask, is a market researcher or consumer psychologist also available in NGO companies for people interested in donations, sociopreneur products? Thank you. Not NGO, I mean nonprofit.
Yeah. Yes, definitely, because I think the topic of, nonprofit also includes, sustainability, and then socio-economic empowerment, and even health, etc. I have seen an increase on doing research on that as well, because all these good initiatives to help people or to help the environment and any kind of topics that the nonprofit organizations are working on, it also depends on how people or consumers think about their efforts, right? So how do we change perception and behaviors of people to actually, like my example, travel sustainably or to donate to certain causes? And that kind of persuasion that we are questioning can be answered by market research. And I definitely see the opportunities are growing in that field to, how to target people better, to donate, to contribute to a cause by actually researching them.
I hope that answers your question, Zafira. I'm going to allow one more question before we ask our second very important guest today, guest lecture. One more question. Yep. Thank you very much from Zafira. One more question, or Kak Nadia will ask you a question. I think someone...
Can I ask questions?
Yeah, sure, Herrera, go ahead.
It's more about the, first of all, thank you for your presentation, very insightful. So it's more about the technical aspect for your research, because in your presentation, I kind of interested in your research. So from your participants, you gain access to a lot of different countries. And my question is that how would you gain the access to that participant? Because I believe it is kind of, it requires a lot of time and effort. Yeah, thank you.
That's actually a good question. So thanks for asking. Because we are in the headquarters, indeed, we have to do research globally. I do research in 30 countries every month, and we actually work with vendor or panel provider. For example, I think Kantar, Nielsen, they have people where we can ask these people to fill in our surveys, and they will get paid or they will get rewards by doing our survey. So indeed, we don't have access to all these people globally ourselves, but we work with panel providers or even other or vendors to help us that with this respondents we have, we need to fill in our surveys. And yeah, they have this panel and they pay those people to fill in the surveys, and we pay them for their service. Hope that's clear.
Okay, just to help a little bit with Herrera, I'm not sure that this particular audience is very familiar with Kantar and I think, well, such companies. Can you explain a little bit what companies like that do in comparison to what you do, like what their job is in helping you?
So you mean for the agency side, right? So market research in an agency, they work on multiple research projects for different clients, including us, Booking.com. Whereas us as a client-side company, we only work on our project, but Kantar or any kind of market research agency, they work for multiple companies or multiple projects. And the kind of work that they do is actually pretty similar. They run survey and they deliver reports to the clients or the companies, but the the positive side is that they have more access to more people, right? So they have this platform where they gather a lot of people from different countries in order to run survey among them. So they pay these people, or they give rewards to these people who sign up to fill in the survey, and that's why they have more access to these people to do research on, and that's why they can deliver lots of projects in a short period of time. So basically, they're the bridge of
they're kind of, I guess, like an EO for getting helping you get those respondents. Yeah, to put it, to oversimplify it, I guess that would be how you explain it. Does that help, Harera?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes. Okay, and we have one question from Pak Rahmat, who dropped the question in the chat box. Pak Rahmat, do you want to deliver your question, or should I read it?
Yeah, thank you. Some actually has been already answered, but anyway, if you can highlight the answers again. What I wanted to ask was whether at booking.com you execute the research yourself. Some might be, some, as you indicated, you employ a research agency. Then if you do, when you do the research yourself, do you have kind of panel data that you can recruit your participant from, and how do you manage this panel respondent?
Yeah, thanks, Pak Rahmat. I think, yes, indeed, some of the parts of these questions I just answered earlier, but I think what I have to emphasize is that our company do our market research in-house, and that's why I work there, and we typically just use other market research agency to help us gather or collect these people. We can run surveys too, but we do everything in-house. So typically we have our research, we set our research objectives with different people from the business, and like, what do we want to know, what kind of analysis we need, and then we create the questionnaire ourselves based on that, and then send out the questionnaire to the people in different countries using that service from market research agency. And then once we got enough people to fill in our questionnaires, we analyze the data with statistics, and then we report the analysis and present to stakeholders.
Thank you, Kak Nadia.
Thank you, Kak Nadia, for answering the questions. They're very good questions and very good answers indeed. We still have some time later on for more questions, both for Kak Nadia and Kak Agia. But for now, I will move on to introduce Kak Agia. Hi, Kak Agia. Agia, he doesn't want to be called Kak. All right. His name is Muhammad Irfan Agia, and he goes by Agia. He earned his bachelor degree in psychology at Universitas Padjadjaran Bandung in 2015. And continued his education at the Economic and Consumer Psychology Master's Program at Leiden. And he got a scholarship from LPDP, right? Kak Agia? Right. And he attended his master's degree using a scholarship funded by LPDP. For your information, the master's degree that all three of us attended is actually 1 year, but he graduated within approximately 10 months. So you can imagine doing a master's degree for 1 year is hard enough, and he actually finished even before that, and that is pretty amazing. And immediately after graduating, Agia worked as a consumer and market insight executive at PT Garuda Putra Putri Jaya in Jakarta for a year, where he led various projects related to the development of market research methods. So that includes brand health tracking, brand equity measurement, and etc. I'm not too familiar with these terms. Maybe if you're curious, you can ask him later on. He then worked at Rhea Group, which is the biggest property portal network in Asia Pacific, and the second biggest in the world. He then, in December 2019, started working as consumer insight lead at Link Aja, where he is responsible for leading all consumer insight gathering work, as well as implementing nudges and choice architecture in order to retain and activate consumers. Kak Agia is a very active person in sharing and promoting consumer psychology. I shared in our WhatsApp group a few days ago with you students some of the screenshots of his talk on TV. And he also promotes behavioral science in general in the marketing context. He has shared numerous insights, as I said, on national television, and actively talks in webinars, just like this one. And he even has his own podcast called Decision Making with Irfan Agia, which you should check out after this class. He recently co-authored a book called The New Generation Z in Asia, where he talks about consumer psychology in the Asian context. Everyone, please give a big round of applause for Agia. Agia, welcome. Yay.
Thank you, Vira, and everyone. Thank you, Nadia, for the insightful session before to give a context about the market research and consumer psychology. And maybe I can share my screen, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, can you all see?
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Vira, for the introduction, and hi everyone. My name is Agia. You can just call me Agia. So I will share maybe some more explanation about consumer psychology, because before Nadia already give us a lot of context about what are consumer psychologists doing, what are the market research studies for, and I think I will share some more detail about it. So this is just a snapshot of my previous work. So as you can see, maybe in Indonesia you can call me kutu loncat ya. So I already moved to 3 different industry in the market. So first FMCG, fast moving consumer good at Garuda Food. After that I went to property portal industry. I think that is one of the most hardest industry that I ever take on, yeah, because buying a property, buying a house, buying an apartment is a very, very important decision that everyone could make. So there's a lot of consideration about what should we research about the behavior, about the influence, etc. And after that, now I am in as a consumer insight lead at Link Aja in e-wallet industry. So it's a digital money. So we aim for the financial inclusion in Indonesia. So we need to to understand a lot of things about consumer behavior, especially in Indonesia region. So beside that, I also share a lot of things about consumer psychology topics. For example, like the millennial as property buyer, cash versus cashless society, how cashless payment affect our decision in buying, for example, about impulsive buying behavior and payday effect. So these are 3 sections that we will discuss about why I choose this job. And after that, second one about the typical work days. So you can get more picture or description about how I do my daily life as a consumer insight and researcher. And what are skills needed that maybe Nadia has studied before, yeah? Some of the skills that we need to thrive in this industry. So how I start my consumer psychology career? Actually, when I was in university, I with some of my friends in psychology, I submitted the proposal, a business proposal that actually winning a business competition. And actually that's the first time I fell in love with the business and marketing industry. So after that, I think I want to continue my higher study. I want to search for a sweet spot between psychology and also marketing or business. So I found consumer psychology is a perfect field for me to pursue the degree. And as you can see, maybe Vira and Nadia remember, yeah, this is the syllabus of the of our degree, consumer psychology. So you can see that there are some compulsory courses like emotion in economic behavior, the psychology of media and communication, applied data analysis, internship, and there are some elective courses like motivation, power and leadership, psychology of economic behavior. So I do a research about the syllabus first. What are things that I need to study when I want to pursue the degree in economic and consumer psychology. So after I saw this syllabus, I think this is the right place for me to learn and to pursue a career here. So after that, I prepared some paperwork and also some interviews and some preparation before going to Netherlands. So I was a LPDP scholarship awardee. So here I met some of the inspiring and most intelligent people here, and I learned a lot from them. And since then, as Vira said before, I become an advocate maybe for consumer psychology field. Like in 2016, I already started an article to introduce the psychology psychology importance in economy. After that, I went to search and do a workshop and seminar session about consumer psychology, and also share about things consumer psychology related on media and television, because I really believe that consumer psychology is a promising field and will be growing a lot of more in the next years. So what is consumer psychology? So consumer psychology in a simple term is about the study of how consumer make decision, and about what they need, about they want, and how do they buy, use, and dispose of goods. So basically, we want to understand why people buy. Yeah. So why understanding consumer psychology is important. So if we want to run a business or run a company, we need to make sure that we have these three pillars. The first one is brand promise. What are the differences between your brand with other, what are the positioning of the brand itself. And the second one is product offered. What kind of product that you offer? How can you help consumer with your product or services? And the third one is an insight about consumer. Who are our target market? How do they behave? What are their habits towards the product, etc. So if we already understand about these three pillars, we can make a business, consumer-centric business. I want to share to you about the case study and best practice about Nike. So as you know, Nike has a brand purpose or point of view that they want to unleash the athlete in all of us, because Nike believe that everyone is an athlete by nature. So they want to be a brand that when everyone wears Nike, they feel like they're an athlete, they're more energized, and they're more motivated, etc. And the second one is the product truth. So they want to create or serve a product that thrive for innovation, to give an inspiration, motivation, and the performance of greatness. So as we can see that every commercial of Nike, they always use the brand ambassador, for example, the athlete, but they want to share the story, the storytelling about how they already achieve their greatness and what are the barriers they face. And when they wear, or consumer wear the product, they want to share the story about the greatness of the athlete. And who are the people they serve? So Nike basically serve everybody in this world. So they have a belief that if you have a body, you are an athlete. So anyone with a body is a target market for Nike. And the next one is the most important part, which is the human truth. Nike, based on their research, found that actually in every human, there's a competitive spark within us and a drive to improve. But there's a self-doubt that tends to put limits on us, on what we can achieve. So based on these four findings, Nike make a brand communication idea, just do it. So they consistently use this marketing communication throughout the years based on these findings. And as you can see, they did it pretty well. And they do it consistently because they have a solid foundation about how they feel, how they view their consumer, and how they do design the product. So about consumer psychologists and market research, what's to describe our role? The first one is data. You will crunch a lot of data, and you will you will search for data, and you need to understand the pattern of the data. And the second one is analytic. You need to analyze what's the interesting part between this connection between this data. And the third one is research. You can do a primary research for yourself, as an in-house, or as Nadia said, we can do secondary research also. The fourth one is insight. We need to produce insight Insight is a suggestion or a recommendation that really can be an actionable part for the stakeholder. The fifth one is scientific. We need to have a scientific mindset that every data that we gather must be statistically true, must be statistically correct, and also we gather the data with a solid background of science. The sixth one, empathy. We need to have an empathy for consumer because at the end of the day, we will be the voice of our consumer within this company. And the last one is behavior. So behavior is the end product that we want to analyze. We want to really focus on the behavior of our consumer. So in summary, our role is to become the voice of consumer. And career prospect about in consumer psychology field, I think is very wide. Yeah, the first one, of course, research and data. You can be a consumer insight researcher. You can be a business intelligence analyst. You can be a consumer experience associate, for example. The second one is in marketing and advertising field. So market research and analytic, like Nadia, and campaign analyst, advertising and communication consultant, and also you can be a part of the think tank team in brand strategy and planning. Product field, product and operation, like the product manager, sales lead, and of course UX researcher. And what will you do? You will do, like Nadia said, yeah, there's always qualitative and quantitative research. Qualitative research, for example, like focus group discussion. You can be a moderator or designing a focus group discussion to answer some of business objective. And also you can do an interview, in-depth interview, for example. And you can do an observation, whether it's field observation or also an online observation. The second one, quantitative research, like you will crunch and categorize raw data. So you must have a good knowledge in operating Excel at the basics. Second one, finding patterns, analyze and uncover insight from those data. And you need also to operate research software or technologies. For example, in marketing field, we usually use Tableau, for example, the name of the software, etc. And you will be also the voice of the consumer, and you will do a voicing insight, both for internal, for company, or external. For example, I also always share the data and insight my team found in town hall session inside the company. So I share a lot of data, a lot of update, the trend of consumer behavior to another team in internal. The second one, share the research process and across division. And also you can be a spokesperson for the company to the media on external event. So these are the things I like about my job. So the perks about being a consumer psychologist or market research. First one, you will always deal with a top level management project. So in every company that I ever work on, I always do a research for project for top level management, whether it's at C-level or head of group project. So you will meet an important part of the project and share it to the top level management. The second one, you can have an insight not only about your consumer but also about the market. So you can be a whole package of knowledge, consumer and also the market trend. The third one, international exposure. So if you work on the international or multinational company, actually you need to share your country's data to another country, so you can get a lot of international exposure. And the fourth one that I like the most is paid traveling. So I did a lot of field study, field research. For example, when I work in FMCG at Garuda Food, I went to Vietnam for 3 weeks and also go to Melbourne, Australia to do some research. And in Indonesia, I also went to a lot of cities in Indonesia just to do the thing I love, do the observation and research. So these are, I think, the perks that I believe that it will be very enjoyable for some. And skills you must have, yeah, I just repeat some of the Nadia's content before, like analytical thinking. You need to have a curiosity to analyze and crunch the data. You have to have a wide perspective taking and empathy towards your consumer. you have a sharp observation. And for resourceful literature, so like the slide Nadia share, yeah, read and read. You have to read a lot of things, a lot of reports, secondary data. So you have a lot more context and perspective to uncover insight from your data. Fifth one, time management, because you can have a multiple project at the same time. So you need to know how to prioritize the project, how to manage your time and energy, of course. And scientific mindset, like we discussed before. Assertive communication. So this is one of the challenges that I think Nadia also face. Yeah, sometimes the data that we found maybe not good to hear. Yeah, for some stakeholder. For example, I found that our sales in Yogyakarta, for example, is not as good as predicted. But anyway, I need to share those data to the Yogyakarta team. And you will I found some resistance, some things that maybe not it's a hard truth, yeah, for them to know that the data doesn't support their hypothesis, but data is data. I need to share it with an assertive way to do that. And the last one is business acumen. This is also important. So if you work in a traveling industry, you also need to know the trend of the traveling industry itself, yeah. So not only about how you conduct a research, the hard skill to do the data collection and analysis, but you need to also understand the trend of the industry itself. So these are industry which highly value consumer behavioral field, FMCG, e-commerce, financial services, advertising, travel and tourism, and media and news, yeah. So I think this is also a discussion point that I want to share first, yeah, to you guys, that these are the questions that always comes into our minds, yeah, when we want to pursue a career, whether we want to be a generalist or a specialist. So for example, I have a background in psychology, and of course I have a basic knowledge in human behavior. So if I want to be a generalist, I have some knowledge about a lot of things. Yeah, for example, I have a little knowledge about behavior science. I have a little knowledge about data and analytics. I have a little knowledge of brand and marketing, and also business operation. So these are called a generalist. So you have some knowledge in a lot of field, yeah, but only a little. So you can speak a language, yeah, in those fields, but not that deep. But if I choose to be a specialist, I will go to pursue deeper about psychology. For example, I want to understand consumer psychology, social psychology. So if I choose this path, I can be a specialist. But unfortunately, nowadays, we cannot choose to be generalist or specialist. We need to be both. Yeah, so in this era that we need to be very flexible, we need to be very adaptive. That I think we need to have some knowledge in a lot of field, but you need to also to have your expertise first. So I think what we can say that the future belongs to Polymath, the integrator. So we can integrate a lot of knowledge that we know about a lot of things, and also we need to have a solid background or our specialty in some field. So this is the data from World Economic Forum. So these are the future skills that we needed. For example, the insight analyst, we can see that it on the 8th rank, yeah, insight analyst. So these are the jobs that I think will be very needed, yeah, in the near future. So we can see also the increasing demand and decreasing demand. So I think consumer psychology is one of the most promising transferable skills in the world where you need to be adaptive. Okay, I think that's all. So after this, maybe if you want to connect, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and also as Vira said, yeah, if you have time, you can listen to the podcast, decision making. I share a lot about psychology, consumer psychology, about our daily life, behavior science, etc. Okay, I think that's all. Vira?
Thank you very much, Agia. A big round of applause for Agia. Thank you very much. I found that really insightful as well. It kind of feels like I'm being a student again, learning new things about consumer psychology and behavioral science in general. Now I'd like to allow a few questions from the audience. Please drop your questions in the chat box or feel free to turn on your microphone. If you don't have any questions, rest assured that Agya has questions for you, or at least I do. So waiting for members of the audience to ask. Right. We'll wait a minute. One of the things that I do want to say about students here from Yogyakarta is that you guys are very, very smart, but we rarely hear your voices in opportunities like this. So come on, let's hear some questions or opinions or anything you would like to say. Otherwise, I'm going to point out someone to have a few minutes. Pak Rahmat, do you have a question? Maybe?
Yes, I do. Yes,
yeah.
I do. I'd like to use this opportunity to get some insight from Mas Agya and Mbak Nadia. You are both, Mas Nadia is living and working in Indonesia. Mbak Nadia is Indonesian, working in the Netherlands. You two both studied in the Netherlands, so you two have the wide international exposure. In terms of working in these marketing and consumer behavior areas, what is the prospect, what is the opportunities working in Indonesia as compared to working in other countries? And in case that the students are having aspirations of working overseas, how to start the career, how to get the opportunities to work overseas. I think that will be interesting insight to the students. So my question both for Kak Agya and Kak Nadia.
Thank you.
Maybe start with Kak Agya. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Rahmat. First of all, Agya, maybe you weren't here early on. Pak Rahmat is the co-teacher for this course, and he is a doctor graduate from Tilburg. So he is also a Netherlands graduate. So first, Agya, maybe you can answer the question, and then later I will give it to Nadia.
Actually, Vira, unfortunately, I lost connection like 1 minute ago, so I don't get.
Okay. So Pak Rahmat's question is, how would you compare the opportunities of become a consumer psychologist here in Indonesia as compared to in the Netherlands? For instance, if you maybe you have insights on Indonesia, and then Nadia can continue on how it is in the Netherlands.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Pak Rahmat, for the question. So I think it's interesting question to broad up, yeah. So based on my perspective, market research industry and also consumer psychology field is a growing field, yeah. So I actually can share the data, but I forget where the slide is about the trend of Google search about market research, consumer psychology. Also, we see a positive trend, yeah, in recent years. So I think the demand is already there, yeah, and the supply also. And I think the opportunity of market research industry in Indonesia is a very broad, yeah. And if I compare to other perspective abroad, yeah, I already I also got a job from REA Group Asia in an Australian company, yeah. So they really value research. They really value the data. So they always want to make business decision making always based on the data. Always make it consumer centric. Yeah. So they have a big team consists of consumer insight analysts, market research. So they really want to make sure that every business decision always come from data. So if I simplify the answer, the opportunity is very big, yeah. But that some things that we need to consider, the target or the profile of consumer in Indonesia is different from consumer in Netherlands, consumer in Australia, for example. So I think the empathy is one of the skills that I think psychology graduate have a good start with ya. Karena I think empathy is one of the skill that if we want to have a perspective from others, especially consumer, we need to have to take their shoes first ya. So I think the chance for psychology graduate to work in consumer psychology field and market research is very high ya, especially if we have that empathy skills.
Okay. On that note, Agia, I would also like to join in on asking. I rarely, well, maybe it's just me. In Indonesia, I rarely hear these positions that are specifically consumer psychology related or consumer insights related. And is that truly the case, or is that because I am kind of, ignorant or something like that?
Yeah, actually, in some industry, it's common to find a consumer market insight position, yeah, especially in FMCG. So previously, when I worked in FMCG, I become a consumer and market associate, insight associate. It's very common in FMCG, also in the e-commerce, also in the advertising and media. There are a lot of job position that really related to the consumer behavior. So the title of consumer psychologist specifically is not yet that common ya in Indonesia, but the job desk and also the job field, actually it's been there for a long time ya, but it's in the different name. Actually, for example, a consumer and market insight, the product research also. So I think that's the case ya.
I see. All right. Thank you, Agia, for answering the question. Maybe, Nadia, you can add on your perspective in the Netherlands, or if you also know how it would compare to the landscape of consumer psychology jobs in Indonesia.
Yeah, I think Agia already sums up pretty much everything, but indeed, like I said previously, we do see a growth of market research roles globally to grow 18%, which is huge. And so, like Agia said, the demand is gonna be increasing more and more. But I think the difference will be, yeah, there are definitely country differences in terms of the demand of this role. For example, I do see in European countries, at least, that there are lots of companies hiring for not only market research, but they also ask for consumer psychologists. And we actually at Booking even has some consumer psychologists. So the title consumer psychologist there, because they truly appreciate this special knowledge of psychology that they feel like maybe other areas or fields are not really are not touching upon at the moment, and adding this insights into human behavior, preferences, trends, cultural differences are definitely an added value in at least European countries I've been in touch with. But also I think in Indonesia it's getting more and more open to this kind of role, because as in developing countries like Indonesia, we have more businesses entering the market, especially in digital e-commerce, and they need to be consumer centric in order to compete and win the consumer's heart, right? And Indonesia, for example, Indonesia is a very populated country, and we are very segmented. People from Java behave or have different values than people from Sumatra, for example. And how do we, as a company, target all this different audience, which means that actually research and consumer insights is even more important in countries like us. So I think, and I totally see that companies nowadays in Indonesia have been starting to realize the importance of this, and therefore seek also experts or people who are knowledgeable of this kind of things.
All right. Thank you, Nadia, for your answer. I will actually get back to you in regards to Pak Rahmat's question on starting a career abroad in a little bit. I would like to first read a question for Agia from Yasinta. Yasinta, do you want to ask the question directly, maybe? Turn on your microphone. Or not? Okay, I'm going to read the question. Thanks, Kak Agia, for the insightful talk. Since I'm very curious about the property industry, would you like to share any interesting experiences as a behavior scientist or consumer psychologist in the property industry? So is there like, is it as a consumer insight specialist or a consumer psychologist, is it any different working in, say, the e-wallet industry to the property industry?
Yeah, thank you, Yasinta, for the question. Actually, property industry is the toughest, yeah, from my experience, because buying property is, as I said before, is the most important decision that everyone can make. And there are two factors that really affect the decision. The emotional factors, like for example, I want to live close to my parents, and also about the proximity of the place with the lifestyle places, etc. And also it's a very rational decision at the same time. You need to calculate your your money first, the mortgage or the bank loan, etc. So you can imagine that you need to understand in the both worlds, yeah, rational and emotional factors, that you need to understand that to actually forecast and define what kind of consumer that will be the most potential things that the property clients can reach on, yeah. So the interesting part of my experience on property industry is the research to make a consumer journey, actually. So different from a consumer journey, for example, at booking.com, yeah, traveling journey, and also different from e-commerce industry. The journey of property buying journey is a large scale, yeah. For example, I made a 6-month journey, a 1-year journey, because not everyone can just buy property in a short time, right? That you need a lot of consideration before you actually buy the property. So one of the most interesting project is to create a consumer journey touchpoint. So we do both qualitative and quantitative study. Yeah? So qualitative study, we do an observation. We did the in-depth interview to a lot of segment. For example, like the millennials, and also the Gen X, about their view about the property. Yeah. For example, I find an interesting insight that millennial is hesitate to buy a house, yeah, landed house, because the sharing economy. So they actually ask, why do I need to buy a house when I can rent, for example, because we live in a sharing economy age, yeah. We can use online transportation, so we don't have to buy a car or buy a motorcycle. We can rent Airbnb, for example, or hotel or apartment we can rent. So they still don't see the need of owning a landed house. So we get those insights by doing a qualitative study, yeah, the interview. And after that, we want to validate this assumption, this hypothesis, through a quantitative study, which a national-wide survey. So after that, we create a profiling, a consumer profiling. Maybe market researcher know this as a persona, consumer persona. So we made a consumer persona for a property buyer, and I did that in I think 7 months, yeah, 7 months of study. So it really exhaustive, but I think that is one of the most interesting project that I ever take, because buying a property decision is a very hard and very important decision for every consumer.
All right. Thank you, Agya, for the answer. To make it to simplify it, I guess what Agya means, Yasinta, is that Agya has to follow the whole journey of a person in order, starting from they consider different types of houses until they actually buy the house, and their evaluation after, which will take very long in comparison to if you're going to Indomaret to buy shampoo, which is kind of like, yeah, you can just go out and buy shampoo. You can't just go out and buy a house. I hope that answers your question. And then there's also another question for Agya. Jika kita berada dalam company, di mana company itu belum punya perspektif dalam consumer psychology, bagaimana caranya agar kita dapat memulai membangun perspektif tersebut dari dalam perusahaan?
Yeah. Oke, ini bahasa aja ya, Wahyu ya.
Boleh.
Makasih Wahyu pertanyaannya. Jadi itu juga yang aku nggak tahu ya, mungkin Vira atau Nadia juga punya pengalaman sama. Jadi waktu pertama aku masuk ya company, especially waktu di area group di industri, itu title-nya itu spesifik banget ya, behavior science lead gitu. Dan itu memang posisi yang sangat spesifik gitu. Nah, waktu aku pertama kerja di sana, banyak yang bingung, ini lo kerjanya apa ya, by the way gitu kan. Terus apa yang bisa lo bantu gitu kan. Nah, jadi memang challenge-nya ketika kita berada di field atau di area yang mungkin belum familiar ya, masih uncommon, itu memang kita harus actively menjadi advokat dari si field kita. Jadi kita harus memaklumi juga sebetulnya kalau mereka tuh masih belum tahu, masih bahkan kayak emang lu posisinya apa sih, ngapain aja gitu kan, itu sangat understandable. Ya, itu sangat understandable. Jadi tugas kita adalah kita harus sharing nih, nggak cuma kerjaan kita apa, tapi what can I help you with gitu. Jadi apa sih peran saya gitu ya untuk teman-teman yang lain. Kayak contohnya waktu aku pertama jadi behavior science lead, aku tuh langsung ngasih tahu ke tim sales gitu ya. Jadi matriksnya kan biasanya kalau sales itu ketika kita bikin ini ya, misalnya property expo gitu ya. Kita bikin property expo, terus matriksnya adalah berapa banyak orang yang akhirnya beli gitu ya di expo tersebut. Nah, aku bilang ini kayaknya matriksnya ketinggian nih gitu dan mungkin nggak relevan. Kenapa? Karena berdasarkan psikologi gitu ya, ilmu psikologi, orang itu tidak akan langsung jump in mengambil keputusan hanya karena kita bikin edukasi gitu ya atau sampai level awareness. Jadi aku bilang tuh ada tahapnya, ada namanya model KAB, knowledge, attitude, sama behavior gitu ya. Jadi orang yang sudah dapat knowledge gitu ya tentang produk kita, belum tentu sikapnya atau attitude-nya itu positif terhadap kita gitu ya. Atau ada consideration, udah ada desire. Terus juga untuk orang yang sudah ada desire atau sudah consider kita, belum tentu juga gitu ya membeli produk kita gitu ya. In the end behavior-nya akan convert gitu. Jadi menurutku saranku ini kayaknya kejauhan matriksnya. Kalau mau matriksnya adalah dari segi knowledge gitu ya. Berapa orang yang knowledge bahwa kita itu presence ada di expo ini. Berapa orang yang jadi teredukasi bahwa membeli properti itu bisa lewat banyak hal, banyak cara gitu ya. Jadi matriksnya akhirnya jadi berubah gitu kan, karena itu jadi curhatan teman-teman chef juga gitu. Aduh, ini kita di expo tapi targetnya udah berapa orang yang convert gitu kan. Jadi itu salah satu cara untuk mengenalkan gitu ya. Oh iya, berarti peran Agia ini adalah memberikan kita perspektif lebih jelas dari sisi konsumen. Karena konsumen nggak langsung beli loh. Kalau kita jualan ada tahap-tahapnya nih. Nah untuk yang consideration itu KPI-nya tim marketing gitu kan untuk meningkatkan appetite gitu ya, interest gitu kan. Jadi seperti itu sih. Jadi memang kita harus jadi advokat dan menjelaskan apa sih benefit dari kerjaan kita di perusahaan. Karena in the end ketika orang-orang tahu apa added value kita gitu di perusahaan, mereka akan lebih concern dan juga lebih respect juga gitu ya terhadap si field ini. Mungkin itu ya, Wahyu ya.
Oke, terima kasih Agia. Mungkin juga yang bisa dipetik nomor satu adalah untuk tidak menyerang cara-cara yang sudah ada, tapi memulai dari apa sih yang bisa kita bantu dulu gitu, supaya orang itu paham apa pentingnya kita ada di sini, melihat bahwa kita benar-benar ada added value-nya dan bukan sekedar menyerang culture yang udah ada kayak gitu. Just to note aja, friends and audience members, consumer psychology or the role of consumer psychologist is thus far, I think, one of those psychology or one of those professions by which when you graduate, you actually use what you learn in school. In comparison to other professions, although it is within the field of psychology, it doesn't necessarily use what you have been taught in class. Whereas consumer psychology mostly is actually using the skills that you learn in class. So if you feel like you still want to get connected with whatever you learn here in class at UGM or elsewhere, be a consumer psychologist. Why am I promoting this job? All right. Now I want to ask a few questions to the both of you. My first question is, as well, the audience already know, both you, Agya and Nadia, are graduates of master's degree. And do you guys think it is possible to become a consumer psychologist or someone who uses consumer psychology within the marketing context or so on without a master's degree? Maybe Nadia first?
Yeah. I would say it depends where you want to pursue your career, right? Because, for example, in Indonesia, I see lots of amazing people or amazing market researchers obtaining bachelors only. But I think the most important part is what Agia actually point out earlier in the slide, to become both generalist and specialist. So it's a matter of how you want to, learn more what not only what you have thought in class, but outside, and having a broad knowledge or perspective and learn by yourself from university or from outside and seeking experiences. I think that's even more important addition to the masters. And whereas if you want to pursue a career abroad, like in the Netherlands or Europe, honestly, it's more common to have a master's degree, not a must, but it's more common to have a master's degree and then becoming a consumer psychologist or market researcher, whatever, in countries like Europe, I would say. But I would still emphasize on the being both generalist and specialist, and it can be obtained not only from what degree you have, but how broad you have experiences in education or even like on job, on the job.
Thank you, Nadia. Maybe Agya, you can add on that?
Yeah. Actually, if we want to focus on the title, title consumer psychologist, I think you need those masters, if you really want to, for the title, consumer psychologist. Actually, you entitled to that consumer psychologist title because you have an relevant background, in consumer psychology. So you can be considered or called as consumer psychologist. But at the end of the day, if you want to work on the consumer psychology field, it's very broad. That actually not necessarily you need to have a master's degree, because I think consumer psychology field is a very broad field, and actually anyone from sociology, anthropology, business, management, and even philosophy can enter those fields as long as you can give an added value to the team and how you can produce insight. So I think it's not a must, but it will be valuable if you want to be called consumer psychologist. I think it's just an expertise title, based on the academical background. But in the reality, at the end of the day, if you in the work field, you can always comes from various background, whether you want to be a researcher, an analyst, for example, product manager. Also, I think they're very broad field.
Okay. Thank you for your answers, Kak Agya and Nadia. There is also one question that wasn't answered yet, which is Pak Rahmat's question in regards to how exactly does one start a career abroad as a consumer psychologist? And this I would direct to Kak Nadia. Agya and I will be listening here because we are curious as well. Okay.
Yeah, I think I would be able to only answer in a personal level because, of course, people experiences differ. But I would say, actually, it's related to the previous question about masters, right? I agree to Agya's point about the masters being our title as consumer psychologist, and we actually obtain knowledge in depth on consumer psychology more than we obtain in bachelor's, for example. And I think that's especially if you want to have a career abroad, having that title or having that expertise it can stand out, And I think starting from having the knowledge and the expertise and later the title it can add value to you as someone from abroad can bring to a country that already have market researcher or marketers or whatever. So the more added value you have, or the more you stand out, and the more knowledge you have, the better you have the opportunities to work abroad. And I think to be practical, I remember that this is the reason why I actually pursued my master's because I want to get working experiences abroad for a few years before maybe in the future or long term going back to Indonesia. But and yeah, it is important to have masters, not only because everyone here is common to have masters, but to bring that value as for your self branding, but also that knowledge you can add. And then actually there are lots of opportunities for you to start being a consumer psychologist, even in companies that currently don't have consumer psychologists or people focusing in this area, by actually trying out learning what they currently have, like being a generalist and specialist, like Agia said. And that's how you can bring values to the company. I remember when seeking my first internship in this market research agency, they actually didn't open a position at all. I was struggling to find an internship abroad because of the language barrier, and then because of the time pressure that I had to finish everything, squeezing my master's and my internship at once. So I just sent like bunch of emails to every company. And then I remember that this market research agency only have researchers, but yeah, I remember saying that, hey, I am interested in market research and I can actually add this value of consumer psychology knowledge on top of the marketing knowledge or business knowledge that you already have and that I also know a bit of. And that is something they find attractive. And they hired me without having any open position beforehand. And then I got in, and that actually having a unique position in a company is what brings me to booking.com. Because in booking.com, even market researchers are mainly business people or marketeers. And yeah, that's basically how I built my career abroad, is by having expertise and something to sell to these people that they're not really aware of.
Yeah. Nadia's journey is something I'm very familiar with because I was there while she was applying for all those internships. And one thing that I can say is one of the, I guess, there's no shortcut to working abroad. There's no shortcut to getting an internship abroad. It's all in your personal branding, your ability to I guess build on the skills that you already have, and how to sell that, how to sell that to people in those companies, even if they never had that position open initially. So those are things that you can try. You can email a few companies abroad for an internship position, and going from there, you might be offered a full-time position, or that could be a stepping stone for you to work full-time there. So thank you, Kak Nadia, for that answer. I would like to give an, oh yeah, ada Herrera. Yes, the slides will be shared on Classroom. Is that okay, Kak Nadia and Kak Agia? Yeah, okay. Pak Rahmat, do you have maybe any questions or anything to add while we wait for the audience to add more questions, ask more questions? Yes.
Yes, I do. While we're waiting for students with the question, I think we can make it kind of a talk show, no?
Yeah.
But I'd like to bring into the contemporary situation, which is the COVID-19, which affect global market. And I suppose, I guess that also has a significant impact on the businesses. And we are lucky that Akia and Kak Nadia is from two different industry currently, from the traveling industries and from the e-money industries, which I heard that the changes are quite different on these two industries. But that's what only I read from the media. So if you can tell us and describe how changes are there in the consumer behavior, in the market, and in the business with regards to this COVID-19 limitation of movement imposed in many countries, and how the outlook, the future would likely be for respective industries and you are working at.
I think that's a very interesting question. I can start with travel industry. As we all know, of course, COVID hits the travel industry pretty bad, including Booking.com, just to be transparent. And of course, there are so many challenges that we face, right? First is the travel restrictions, but also second is the pandemic itself. We, as a travel company, don't want to say to people, "Hey, go out in the middle of pandemic, bring profit to us." It's not ethical, right? So indeed, there are many challenges that requires us to change our strategy, change the whole strategy, and change our perspective. Do lots of research into these trends or the new normal, and I think that we actually succeeded on that in a way that, yeah, pandemic is still happening, travel restrictions are still in place, but we have started to see shifting behaviors and trends that can equip us to start. Okay, so people are still wanting to travel. So that's the most important insight is people are tired of their static routine, work from home routine at home. And as long as they can still travel domestically, for example, within the country safely, or just to go to one place to the other within a few kilometers, for example, and that's still something they cherish for in the middle of pandemic. So that kind of insights is actually what makes us able to strategize. We see that people still want to travel, although within a short distance and using cars instead of flights. And then they prefer to rent, instead of hotels, they prefer to rent a type of seclusive villas or homes that they can rent for themselves and not sharing with other people's for their own safety and health and that kind of thing. So we have different type of properties, right? We have not only hotels, but we also have homes or villas or resorts and that kind of thing that we can advertise more to these people without being too much, go out and travel, ignore the government rules. But we assure them that if they want to go out safely, they can trust us in giving them the best accommodation. And if and we have we ensure them the cleaning standards that the accommodation has, etc., while still following the government rules to, yeah, stay in your bubble or in your country. I think that's where actually research and consumer insights play the most important role, especially during the COVID-19. And yeah, definitely it saves some time and money for our company to know where to invest on, although yeah, definitely it still has an impact negatively on our business.
Yeah. Uh, Actually, I want to share some things also. Yeah. Actually, I also the traveler that get impacted. Yeah. I booked my flights and hotels at Booking.com on I think or February, and I want to appreciate the handling from Booking.com team. Yeah, because actually I need to reschedule until I don't know when, maybe in the Q1 of next year, yeah, for traveling. So yeah, that's one thing that I want to highlight also. But actually in e-wallet industry, it's different, yeah, from traveling industry, because I think e-wallet industry or digital money is one of the industry that quote unquote benefited, yeah, from pandemic, because this pandemic forces consumer to try more on online payment. Yeah, so this pandemic accelerate the education rate for consumer to try and use the digital payment. So actually, the industry of digital money is I can say thriving, yeah, during this pandemic, because now most of people try to use the online payment to buy things, because our government also ask the consumer to prefer the e-payment compared to the hard cash. Yeah, so I think this quote unquote benefited the e-wallet industry. So I think the industry of e-wallet or digital money will be one of the most maybe I say sexiest, yeah, in the next years, because as you can see or heard maybe Link Aja already get an investment. So we attract a lot of investment lately from a lot of investor from Series B and Series C, yeah, because our investor believe that in next years, digital payment is one of the most important aspect in the business industry, because it also have the government to do the financial inclusion. Yeah, so we want to democratize the financial access and financial payment to all of Indonesian people, and we need a lot of partnership, whether from government, from private sector, yeah, and also from our partners, also our merchants. So I think digital payment is one of the industry that can help consumers to cope, yeah, to cope with their daily life, and it will change their daily life maybe gradually, yeah, in the next years.
Begitu Pak Rahmat, do you have a response?
Yeah, that's the interesting situations, and I think the COVID impact different industry differently. So far, we are still busy with devising strategies to deal with these recent changes, recent impact of the travel restrictions and the impact of anxiety of the consumers to the activities, and that's what mainly brings the contemporary changes. The question is how this will change. I mean, even if next year, for example, the vaccines has already distributed and proven effective and distributed, how the consumer how the changes might be, on which aspect of the changes might become permanent, or what will be coming back to the old one, and in terms of studying psychology, in terms of studying consumer psychology, in terms of doing behavioral, I mean, in behavioral science, I think that will remain be the same, but in application in consumer psychology, I think that would be quite different. How would the changes be like? I mean, in terms of the business as well as in terms of the studies.
Okay, maybe I can share first, because yes, that's a very valid and good question to raise. And I think there are some of the consumer behavior that will stay, yeah, after this COVID, and also go back to the pre-COVID-19, yeah, because there are some experiences that unfortunately cannot be replaced by online, yeah, such as traveling or the music industry, yeah, the industry that I think yet cannot be replaced by online. Yeah. So I think there are some industry or some consumer behavior that will go back to the pre-COVID situation, and it will also revive the quote unquote the dying industry, right? The event industry. But from the payment perspective, I think there are some new consumer behavior that will be stayed. So, for example, from the report or data from various agencies like Nielsen, McKinsey, or BCG, we can see that there are some consumer behavior that will likely to stay. For example, the education. I think education is one of the industry that people will still rely also on the online basis, yeah. And also, for example, the knowledge sector, and also the seminar or workshop, and also the work from anywhere, I think, yeah, because lately, before the pre-COVID, if we work in the company, work from home or WFH is something that not really common, yeah, from each company. But now, when every people or every employee started to work online, work from home, and they still benefited and they still can run the business, there are a higher trust from the top level management to still conduct the work from home policy. Yeah? So I think there are some things that will go back the pre-COVID, and there are also some things that will stay. For example, like the online payment, the online sharing in education field, and also working experience. Also, I think it will most likely stay after the COVID. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Kak Agia. And
Yeah, go ahead, Pak Rahmat.
and Kadia, I'd like to hear from Karnatia as well.
Yeah, I think similar to Agia's point, we actually have started to see behaviors changing, most likely in the long term, but also some behaviors changing back to the old ways. So now that the vaccines is widely announced and we see that people are starting to have this hope and being super optimistic that, hey, this is over soon, we can travel again. So that's definitely the old way, going back to travel in general. But definitely there are some behavior changes that I would say more in the long term. So first is more on, it's gonna be a gradual change. We have the vaccine, but it's not the case that people will bravely just go out in a crowd and travel with everyone else. It's gonna be slowly building their trust back, to be in a crowd, to travel. So that's definitely gonna be a challenge as well for us to ensure that how can people start traveling without this insecurity of, oh yeah, has he got the vaccine, or has she got the vaccine? So that's still a trust issue that may still be in a process or gradual change in the long term. But also, I think the second one is that we realized during the lockdown in several countries, even in Indonesia, I saw in social media that people started to taking pictures of the sky, of how blue it is, because no cars or no transportation has been used during the lockdown, of how environment could have been better before the pandemic if we stay this way. So more on the sustainable or the go green aspect. I think in the long term, it actually, well, we do our research on that, and we definitely see that people are becoming more aware of that environment is very important to be taken into account when traveling. So if you can take, for example, instead of cars or instead of flights, maybe you can take the train, or alternative to make sure that the environment is kept protected. Or if you go to overcrowded places or touristy places, if it gets too overcrowded, it can be polluted with trash, etc. So why don't look for another alternative that is similar in that area that is not really touristy, so that it's not creating an overcrowd. So more on the sustainable behavior that we actually see is even more awareness in the past and started to be manifested in their behavior and in the long term. I think that's I would say in how we see in travel.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Kak Nadia. And Zafira, if I may, I would like to share a research of mine. I mean, of my consulting work, which recently just done, in which we are focusing on the tourism industry, because the client was the Ministry of Tourism of Perak State, Malaysia, that we did. And surprisingly, our research found that there is kind of mismatches between sentiment of the industry and sentiment of the consumers, industry players and consumers. There are mismatches between expectation of the consumer as compared to expectations of the tourism industries, the transportation, the hotel, restaurants, and the what is it, the tourism object itself. If I may, I'd like to share some of highlight of the result.
Yes, Pak Rahmat.
Yes, and the result is already taken by the minister, Datuk Noli Ashilin, as kind of the policy of the Perak State Tourism Authority. And our recommendation was to build this sustainable tourism in post-COVID. Our studies conducted, the data collection was run between June and July and running up to early of August. So already a few months ago, the dynamic was a little different that time, but still the level of anxiety, I think, was pretty similar. That's what I mentioned earlier, that we found different sentiment between the industry, in which the hotel especially, and for example, because similar result also we get from the transportation, the land-based transportation especially, because the research was still focused on the domestic tourism. Last week we get contact from the ministry that they wanted to continue the study into the bordering countries. So the next stage on we will run hopefully on January will cover respondents, consumers from neighboring countries of Malaysia, that is Thailand, Indonesia, and Brunei Darussalam. So the perceptions of the hotel is pretty bad. For example, they are not sure that the guests will, they think that, I'd like to highlight, no, I cannot find it. On the right-hand side, the guests will still be worried with COVID-19 even after MCO. MCO is Movement Control Order, or SPP in our policy. MCO policy is brought to end. 67% agree. But when we compare with finding from and across the industry, the picture is almost similar. Hotel budget across industry in the hotel sectors in this slide. But when we compare with finding from the consumers, they feel that more than half of the sample, 63% confident with using hotel and resort in the post MCO. And in another part of the questions, around 80% of the consumers, they are ready to go back to the tourism activities again, to travel within Malaysia, and to do the tourism activities, because they feel that they have been tired with the MCO, with the limitation, with the movement restriction. So they are pretty confident with the safety that is provided by the hotel, and they can identify a source of apprehensions, mostly from other guests, and hotels' ability to manage their guests. When we compare again, the question is not shown in here. When we compare again with the plan of the hotel, what they would, the program or the policy that they would do in the post-MCO, these are not the priority that they would like to do. So with this, I would like to maybe comments from Kak Nadia in your experience with this, especially tourism industry, where this kind of dynamics between a difference in perception and expectations between consumers and industry, you can kind of identify in other countries, and that may cost, I mean, in terms of business, lack of preparedness for business, or wrong anticipation, thinking that the consumer are actually very apprehensive of the situation, although actually with different strategies that might be, the situation might still be brought to the better conditions. Maybe, and Kak Nadia, please.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and really appreciate you sharing the findings, Pak. That's super interesting for me to learn as well, actually. But definitely, we do see this gap between, because we do research not only among travelers or consumers, but also our partners, right? Partners, which entails accommodation, hotels, and those type of properties. And we do see some differences in terms of their optimism or their perception towards behavior after COVID, in a way that in some countries, and which I can highlight are more developing countries, has this more behavioral or perceptional gap between the consumers or travelers and the accommodation providers. And I think one of the factors that we found to play a role in this is actually one of them is trust towards government, that is like a moderator between them. So in a way that uh, for example, businesses like travel providers or accommodation providers are the ones that was impacted very hard, and some of them are closing down, and this whole negative reality that is surrounding them, and then the fact that they're a bit lost in this governmental rules, and the having no clarity of what the government will impose in the future, how the government react to this pandemic, whether the rules make sense, and how the government help them in keeping the business. That's actually play a role in their perception on the future of travel. Whereas the consumers, they are the ones consuming the service, or the one who enjoy the travel, the one who make decisions whether to travel or not in the future. And the role of government plays more in the perception of the accommodation providers than consumers. At least that's what we think, especially in developing countries where we see that, maybe some people are not clear of what kind of direction the government is trying to bring us to get through this COVID, and how the government will help businesses. That really it really stands out in countries where perception towards government's rules are pretty low. And I think that's one of the differences that I can one of the factor that might play a role in this difference in perception between business owners and consumers.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you, Nadia. I agree with what you said, that of the moderating role of the trust to the government. In our studies, the consumers, the Malaysian consumer has a very strong trust, belief, confidence with Malaysian government's ability to manage, to control, and to impose the policies, so they have complete trust with it. And in that case, the gap is, I think, in understanding, I think, for the industry, of not understanding the trust that the consumer has to the government, as well as their preparedness with the kind of guarantee from the government of the safety of the adherence to COVID protocol 19 by the industry, was the one that being missed by the industries, and it cost a couple of months, I think, in terms of their business performance being very very bad, if I may say that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Pak Rahmat, for also sharing your own experience. To those of you who don't know, Pak Rahmat also has a consulting company which is based on specifically economic psychology. So he develops instruments that is based on, we can say, economic psychology or towards behavioral economics. And he consults also a lot of telecommunication companies here in Indonesia via his company. So before I close, I would like to hear some of our friends in the audience, what they learned today, and maybe some things that they found interesting or new. I would like to call, boleh dalam bahasa Indonesia tentunya, Maidira, you here?
Yes, Mbak Zafira.
Yeah. can you maybe, if you can, turn on your camera and then share a little bit of what you learned from today, and maybe if you have any questions?
What I learned is just mostly just insights on what we can do as a psychology student, and that the possibility is unlimited for us, maybe because we talk about human behavior. So marketing could be one of our prospects, and that is just like, that opens my mind because especially now at my 7th semester, I'm starting to think about what kind of career I want to pursue. And I thought before that marketing is not, I'm really interested and curious about that branch, but then again, I am not very confident because, as you said, that our competitors is also came from marketing student or business. But our guest lecturer today taught us that there are some ways that we can do to like to feel that it is okay to pursue other than what we are mostly thought of, like marketing, like the internship program and also the master's degree. I think that is really useful for us.
Thank you, Maidira. I'm glad that it has helped provide insights to you in some way. Maidira, actually, for your information, speakers, that she shared in a previous lecture that she actually helped consult her own family's business because she attended this consumer behavioral class. And I think that is, even if people in this audience don't decide to become a consumer psychologist, it is helpful for them in some other ways. Consumer psychology is applicable to you whether or not you want to be a consumer psychologist or not. And I'd like to ask one more person. Nisa Corlidea, are you here? I think I saw her. Nisa? Yeah.
Hello, sorry.
Hi.
So from what I learned from the lecture today was, it was very interesting to see like which areas of like work, I guess, that you can pursue in terms of learning from consumer psychology, and that like there are also a very high demand for this specific field of psychology. And yeah, the overall experiences that Kagia and Kanadia has told us is very insightful.
All right. Thank you very much, Nisa, for sharing what you learned today. And thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, and this guest lecture has to come to an end. Thank you very much to Kak Nadia and Agia for being here today and sharing your experiences. Please join me in giving a big round of applause to Nadia and Agia. Yay! There is a lot to cover within the topic of becoming a consumer psychologist, and hopefully we can hold other webinars in the future. And of course, you can attend webinars that Kak Agia is almost talking about daily. So he gives almost like a daily talk about consumer psychology, or at least each weekend. So you can go ahead and check his Instagram out for any schedules. And hopefully we can also have Kak Nadia here in other opportunities in next consumer psychology lectures next semester. I hope they are still willing to participate in agendas at our faculty. Thank you very much once again for your time and presence. Hopefully, Kak Nadia, you have a safe flight home to Indonesia and have a nice reunion with your family and also your boyfriend, who currently lives in the United States. So she is in a long distance relationship. Everyone, Thank you very much as well for joining me on this guest lecture on a Saturday afternoon. Hopefully it is helpful and insightful to you all. Good luck to you students who have the Dragon's Den coming up in about 6 days. We have the director of Reta company coming in as your jury. So please be prepared for that, for his questions as well. I hope to see you guys soon in other webinars, other opportunities, and good afternoon. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Agia. Thank you, Nadia.
Thank you. Makasih, Kak Agia.
Terima kasih.
Nanti akan ikuti podcastnya di Instagram ya.
Oke, iya. Makasih ya, Nadia, Agia. Nanti aku hubungi lagi sore nanti. Thank you.
Selamat jalan, Kak Nadia.
Bye, Nadia.
Bye-bye.
Terima kasih.
Thank you.